Hello everyone, so I'm here today to do another tag, and this was created by Hen Starlight, I think, and I was tagged by Katie Books. I will leave links to both of those channels below. And this is my problematic favorite book tag. So basically there has been a lot of talk lately about problematic authors and problematic books, and the creator of this tag decided that it was a good idea to face those issues, and open a discussion to see what we can do about it, I guess. And I also have to say that this tag, I feel it's quite targeted at two very problematic things that have happened recently related to the trans community. So it's very trans aware. But I think that it can be extended to all kinds of problematic things that might not be just about trans people. So first of all, it asks to tag some people, and what I'm going to do at the end, it also says to recommend some people. So I'm going to tag the people that I recommend. How about that? So let's start just with the questions. The second question is, are there problematic authors, transphobic, homophobic, racist, that had a huge influence on your life, and how do you deal with this knowing in retrospect? So the two authors that have been in the spotlight recently are J.K. Rowling and Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, and those are both very important authors for me personally. I did grow up with Harry Potter, and I think Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie did open my eyes to a lot of African and more diverse literature, and it did have a big impact on me. Also, you could say that I did read The Witches by Roald Dahl a lot when I was little, and Roald Dahl is also a highly problematic author, but I was not the kid that read all his works all of the time. And for some reason, people feel like when an author is dead, everything is a lot more acceptable, which I'm not sure that is how I feel about it. I really admire the books that J.K. Rowling and Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie put out when I was younger, and they had a big influence on me. And how I deal with it, I guess I don't. I struggle with it. I do really struggle because, especially for Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, I feel like she does have very interesting things to say about things that do not have to do with the trans community. I personally really loved her speech, her TED talk about the problem with a single story or something like that talks about why is it problematic for us to just imagine that all Africans are poor and starving in the streets, and there's nothing more going on. And I do think that even though she has said harmful things to the trans community, and that should not be minimized, that does not mean that she does not have other very interesting, very powerful ideas on other topics. So I do struggle with that balance, because I do want to believe that she would realize at some point that what she's doing is not right, and that she would change her stance. But even if she doesn't, I think that it is difficult when it is difficult to deal with the fact that someone that can come up with such great ideas on one area and one minority can have such reductive views on other topics and other minorities. I guess what I'm trying to do at the moment is just enjoy their works privately, because I do enjoy the works, and I cannot deny that to myself. But I don't want to promote their work. I don't want to buy their stuff. So I don't want to buy their books, but I would read them from the library privately when I feel like I want to do that. I think that's my approach at the moment. And of course, I read a lot of other things that do put into context their ideas about these problematic topics, so that I feel like I cannot agree with everybody's with everyone's views, so I take what I value from them and leave the rest with them, if that makes any sense. And then the other thing that I find problematic with this problematic thing is that there are so many different topics that can be problematic for people. Some people are not problematic for others, and there's all kinds of diversities that we have to consider when we read a book. And I think naturally we all do have issues that we are more interested in and that we gravitate towards. And so if someone does those topics really well but has negative ideas on other topics that are not as important for us, then it is difficult to find that balance. Like, I would love if you have recommendations for a trans-positive, non-binary, international or translated person that does have an awareness of climate change and feminism, and might be a person of color. If you put all those things in a book, and then the book on top of that book is really good, and the writing is good and the story is good, that will be great, but it's hard to find those things. So then you have to choose your battles. Personally, for me, I naturally gravitate towards international books. I do not like to limit my reading to a few countries, and I do like to read from different cultures and different ethnicities and different races, and that is my personal focus, let's say. And if some of those people are part of the LGBTQ plus community, that is great, and I also want to know and support that community, but that is not where I gravitate towards, if that makes sense. So it is difficult to balance all these different things, and Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, for example, it's a very good example of diversity in terms of race and nationality and culture, but it's a horrible example in terms of the LGBTQ plus community. So it's a difficult thing to balance, and I personally haven't figured it out yet. So that was a very long answer to the first question, but then the next question is, are there authors on your TBR, bookshelf, etc. who you know are problematic, transphobic, racist, or homophobic, and how do you reconcile this? I don't think I have. I was checking my TBR, and I don't think there is anyone that, as far as I am aware, are problematic. I do have problematic authors on my shelves. As I said, I do own a Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie book. I do own Roald Dahl book, and other authors, but I I guess that the way that I deal with it is not buy any more of their books, but if I have enjoyed a book and I already have it, I keep it. The next question is, do you do specific research or check the background of the authors you read or recommend, or even just mention regarding their politics? I do not do extensive research on the authors I read. I do research on if the book itself is problematic, and I listen to the people when they do research and they tell me this is problematic. But I do not put, I have to say I do not put that much effort on figuring out all the politics of all the authors I read. The next question is, what does ethical consumption mean to you? So again, this is something that touches what I was previously discussing with all the different topics that are important to us and that are problematic. Something that is very important to me, and that it's, I think, a basic part of ethical consumption, is the fact that for me it is important to be environmentally sustainable. That is part of ethical consumption to me. Ethical consumption first means that you put your money on things that you want to actively support, but at the same time, for me, ethical consumption also means consume only what you absolutely need to, and that means that for me, buying books is not a huge priority because I have a wonderful library with a lot of books that I can read, but that also limits the amount of books I have access to and the amount of, for example, transgender, non-binary international authors I have access to, because normally libraries are not amazingly good at having those kinds of books highlighted. So if you apply ethical consumption to books, for me it will be to buy in small independent bookstores, which I try to do, but because I'm not rich, sometimes I do, sometimes I cannot do that. We here in the Netherlands, we do have a different website that is not Amazon, so I never buy from Amazon, but still it's a big corporation that does not care about the books themselves, but I do try to buy from independent bookstores. I'm lucky enough that the city I live in has two good English or non-Dutch speaking bookstores, so I do have access to some English and non-Dutch books through that. But as I said, I do not like to buy things because for me that is feeding into the capitalist growth forever society. So I prefer more share a more shared way to consume books. I hate the word consuming books, to read books basically. I prefer to borrow them from the library because I think that is a much more sustainable, much more socially aware way to read books, and of course that does limit the books I can read, but I still value that more than go out and buy all the transgender non-binary books and participate in that consumer society. So yeah, it's ethical consumption. It's, for me, it's basically just stick to your values, whichever they are, and act on them, and that is going to look different for every single person. The next question is, which or how many transgender and non-binary authors have you read? And I was looking, and people that I do know are non-binary. I think I've read Akweke Emesi, which I quite like, Dana Smith, which I think I like. I started a Kate Tempest book, and I DNF'd it like 20 pages after because it was absolutely not my kind of book. And then there are also, I have read Girls Will Be Girls by Emma O'Toole, which I think from what I could find, Emma O'Toole does identify as a woman, or at least she uses she, her pronouns as far as I could find. But she does write about gender and the randomness of the choice to make it such a big part of our identity, and the randomness of dividing everyone into male and female. So she's very she does very strongly talk about the non-binary community and how that should be the norm, but I think that herself or themselves they do identify as women, I think. And the same goes with Maggie Nelson. I think that she has written about that community, and I think that her partner is either non-binary or transgender. Yeah, so these two authors are allies, but I don't think they are part of the community itself in themselves, if that makes sense. So those are the ones that came to mind that I have read. The next question is there a transgender or non-binary author that you really enjoyed or will like to mention? Or is there one on your TBR that you're really excited about? And as I said, I would recommend Kweke Emesi. I read Freshwater and I really, really liked it. I think that the way that she uses Nigerian mythology to explain the struggles of the character, the mental struggles, is very smart. I want to read their other books as well, but my library does not have them yet. So I'm waiting for that. And yeah, other authors that I want to read, I'm not aware of any, but if you have recommendations, especially if you have recommendations that are not from the US or the UK, I do want to read The Gender Games by Juno Dorson, which is a non-fiction memoir about her transition, how she realized how women are treated after her transition. I think that's some very rough synopsis of that book. I want to read that, but again, my library does not have it. So maybe someday, I don't know, we'll see. But yeah, if you have recommendations, please leave them down below. I would love to know, especially if they are not from the US or the UK. Yeah. The next question is, how diverse is your bookshelf? And if you don't have a lot of books, your overall reading habits. So again, that depends on what you mean by diverse. I think I do read a fair amount of non-white writers. I read also some authors from the LGBTQ+ community. But I think my focus is mainly to read from authors all over the world. And if you look at that particular thing, I think yes, my reading is quite diverse in nationality, and that doesn't necessarily mean that all these authors are non-white. There are a lot of countries that have a majority of white people, so yeah. But I do think that in that sense it is quite diverse. I think that I could have more representation of the LGBTQ+ community, to be honest, but yeah, I do struggle to find some that I like, and because I think that for me, like, the cultural exploration is important. So having that cultural exploration and having the LGBTQ+ community, I'm sure they exist. It's just a bit harder, that little bit harder to find. So yeah, in that I could improve on that, but yeah, as I said, my focus is on reading international books at the moment. The next question is, do you specifically aim to read more diverse authors, especially trans and non-binary authors? And yeah, as I said, I do not specifically gravitate towards LGBTQ plus authors. I also do not avoid them on purpose, but I do not gravitate to those topics. And maybe I have read books from people that are trans or non-binary and I just don't know it because it's not in the book. But yeah, the topics I tend to gravitate towards are more on other directions, and I do not like to feel like I'm ticking boxes. If the book does not interest me on itself, I think I will not read it. That does not mean that there are no LGBTQ plus books that I'm not interested in. There are, but combined with the fact that they might not be in my library, they are difficult to find and they're difficult to get hold of. I do. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that I look for books that I'm interested in, and those are sometimes LGBTQ plus, and sometimes they are non-white authors. But mostly, what I'm interested in is to explore other cultures and other countries, and so that's what I focus my reading on. Yeah, does that make sense? I don't know how you define that either. Yeah, for example, there was this book that I read called Sworn Virgin that was from Albania, and apparently it is relatively common in Albania, or like it's accepted that if, especially in the rural areas, if you are the single child of a family and you're a woman, you can decide to become a man to keep the name and the property of the family. So Sworn Virgin is about this woman that her father is lost. She lost her mother, and her father asked her to become a man, in the sense of she starts dressing like a man and acting like a man, so that they can keep the property in the family. And yeah, basically she does become a man in that sense, and she is completely accepted in the community as a man the moment that she decides that, and she's sworn to be a virgin and sworn to act like a man for the rest of her life, not because she feels like a man, but because of the circumstances. So is that a transgender book? I don't know, but I find that concept and that cultural habit very interesting. So that's the kind of thing that I prefer to read. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm making sense anymore. But yeah, the last question is, boost some trans and non-binary and or queer booktubers, or other diverse smaller booktubers. And again, I think the only non-binary booktuber that I'm aware of is Jessie from Bow Ties and Books, and yeah, I'm not subscribed to their channel because we read very different books, and I just don't. I try to keep my subscriber feed small so that I don't get overwhelmed if they don't read books that I would be interested in. I tend to not subscribe to them, but they are great. I love their energy. So if you are interested in any non-binary booktubers, I mean, they are a lot bigger than I am. So anyway, but yeah, as I said, because I am interested in other cultures and other non-white authors and also non-white people in general more, I do have more recommendations on that side. Yeah, also I don't think, I don't know which, I don't know if from all the people I watch, I don't know the identity of all of them. Some of them might be queer and I don't know. I watch their content because I like their content, not because they are queer. So there might be some people that I watch that are queer and I don't know because they don't want to share it in their channel. But yeah, so in that sense, I'm going to just recommend some diverse booktubers in general, which they are all, I think, bigger than I am, but I think they are still worth your time. So if you have not checked them out, I think you should. And the first one I'm going to recommend is Nicole, from Nicole is Here to Learn, and she's one of the co-hosts of the Invisible Cities project, which I posted a video about recently, and she's great. She has very short, concise videos about independent presses, about non-fiction a lot, but also fiction that I've never heard about, and I think she's great. So I would love if you go check her out. The other one that I wanted to recommend is Soy Love Kenya, which she's from Kenya, and she reads a lot of African fantasy and African books. They also sometimes have readathons to encourage people to read African books and Kenyan books, and I love that because I love Kenyan books. So yeah, I love her, and I think you could check it out and see if you like what she does. And the last one that I wanted to recommend is Diana in Color, and she's a Black New Zealand booktuber, and she does not only do booktube videos, she sometimes just does, I don't know, photography, decoration videos, but she has the best aesthetics, and I love how calm she is when she talks. So yeah, those are my 3 recommendations of diverse booktubers, not necessarily queer. I'm sorry about that, but yeah, those are just 3 people that I really love to watch. So yeah, I hope that you liked this video. Let me know in the comments if you also struggle with all these ideas of problematic authors, and if you have some problematic author that you love, that you're gutted that said some things. And yeah, until next video, bye.